Hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA, that's Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we have got a past, present, and yet to come show lined up for you. Chris McCarrell of Lightning Thief and TikTok fame is on the pod today. We've met a few times in different social situations, but we got to hang out a few weeks back at Chicago Unifieds, and it was so fun to have him on the pod. Speaking of so fun, MTCA just wrapped an amazing junior weekend, both live in person and online. It was exciting to see our families. Some of them were local, some of them really from abroad who made the trip, and of course those who participated online. And the weekend got me so excited for our summer faculty masterclass week, which is August 1st through 6th this summer. You know, this weekend was really about preparation for the kind of work we'll be doing in those faculty classes. We'll do them in our spring classes online, but especially for that summer, I got to see some of the community start to be built between the students, and it's just really reminiscent of what happens in the summer. We are back, baby. It's very excited. So that will be 12 amazing classes, seeing a Broadway show together, doing a talk back, some Q&As with amazing Broadway actors. We'll have all these exciting meetings like with some of our MTCA alumni. Very excited for that week. I know some of the parents really bonded this weekend and already were making plans for that week. So I will just say, please plan ahead for that if you can. August 1st through 6th, try to be here in New York City participating in that wonderful summer faculty masterclass week. In other exciting news, as many of you may have seen, if you happen to follow me on socials, Elizabeth and I were honored to be guests of our friend Sean Allen Krill, who's a future podcast guest, fear not, for the opening of Parade, and it was just an incredible experience. Not to shill for a show, which may or may not be a BPN advertiser, but please run to see this show if you can. The music was incredible, but I was really blown away by the acting and the direction, as well as the adjustments they made to the show. They clearly put care into updating the work and making it a bit more intersectional, and I think beautifully subtler than previous productions I've seen, which is a big feat in a story that I would not normally describe as a subtle story. And Sean was incredible. He plays Governor Slayton, who's sort of like a moral conscience of the South going through this moment. And he will tug your heartstrings, as of course will Ben and Michaela and the rest of the cast. Definitely worth the price of admission. I'm especially excited for you to hear this episode with Chris, though we do have to give some apologies. We had some significant technical issues. You'll hear, it's not going to sound very different on your end. Chris's audio quality isn't quite as good as it should be. You'll hear like a little couple moments of that. This is somehow due to complicated internet stuff I don't fully understand, but I have to give a huge shout out to the amazing Meghan Cordier, who did a yeoman's job stitching this all together so seamlessly. I think occasionally you'll hear little cuts as she tries to fix timing because we were on two separate feeds and this kind of discrepancy in timing that comes with that. But I think in general, you're going to find it a really smooth listen, which is an impressive job by her. And I think a really excellent episode. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing Chris's perspective. And I think we have a really engaging conversation. And with that, let's get to the episode with Chris McCarrell. Well, we are so excited to be joined by Chris McCarrell. Chris has a BM from Baldwin Wallace University. He's been on Broadway in shows like Les Mis, where he played Marius, opposite our MTCA coach, Alex Fink. Percy in The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical. That's too many Percys in one title. Written by former MTCA coach Rob Rokicki. My God, so many shout outs here. He's done regional shows like Bubble Boy, which your own podcast host helped develop Bubble Boy. That's why we're pulling it from your bio. I was in the Carnegie Mellon, whatever, development reading of this way back in the day.
No way.
He's also been in TV and things like Peter Pan, the OA. He's a well-known cabaret performer. He's featured on the EP of Never Be King alongside the most recent podcast guest, Talia Suskauer. What a small world. And he runs a great TikTok where he gives lots of great tips on being an actor, a singer, auditioning, the college process, all kinds of great information. He's also on the board of the Fund for College Auditions, TFCA, our sister organization. So we're so excited to chat about all that today and to officially welcome you to the pod. Chris, how are you doing?
I am good. What an intro. Wow, when you really list it out, I'm like, Wow, that's getting longer than I thought, but I guess
We make you sound fancy. We do. We zhuzh a bit if we need to,
if
you
you
know?
just keep doing things, by the time you're 32, you got like a whole thing.
I thought it might be fun to add one fake credit to everyone's bio and just see what they did. I've been tempted to do that of just like one small, it wouldn't be like the most fancy credit, but it would just be like an add an off-Broadway show and just see like, are they gonna call me out or are they just gonna let me let that live
Just let it
someday?
slide.
Chris, I'm gonna start you off with the question we ask all of our artist guests to start off, which is just, for our current students thinking about yourself at 16, 17. If you remember what you were looking for in the college process, if you kind of remember as I began looking at schools and what I thought I was trying to get out of school, what I might eventually wanted to do, what were you thinking about in that sort of like your goals for your college list?
Ugh, I just wanted it I was not very strategic. I wanted to just go to one of the top schools. My backup plan was to
Yeah.
gap year, and I was so sick of any classes that didn't have to do with music theater that I just wanted an intense program that was good, that was you wake up and you fall asleep and all you do all day is sing, dance, and act. So I was like ready to just
Yep.
drop my education at high school, which I worked hard to like keep broadband. Like I took a lot of high level classes knowing that it was
Yep.
going to be done,
That was it. Next was conservatory, and
and
that's
then
what we're.
conservatory. So that's what I
Yeah.
did.
And when you say top for you, was it like it was really about the reputation? Like you cared about these five schools I've heard about. How did you determine that? I mean, you're not that much younger than me, so the internet would have
Yeah.
existed for you at least somewhat, but it wouldn't have been like you wouldn't have had the same. You wouldn't have had
Right.
TikTok. You wouldn't have had social media doing this yet. How were you determining which 5, 10 schools you thought of as top of the top?
It was kind of a different world back then. There was less programs. It was kind of more clear cut. But to be honest, it was the programs that had students that I actually thought were better than me or were good. You know what I mean?
And is that but like are you watching YouTube videos? Are you seeing actual shows?
YouTube, and then my brother went to Baldwin Wallace. I have like a really weird journey. My
Uh-huh.
brother was a music theater major 7 years ahead of me. So like I grew up
Huh.
going to Baldwin Wallace shows, hanging out with like the college kids after
Yep.
the show. So like I had a really insider scoop of like what being a music theater major was like.
And did you feel like a judgment of a Baldwin Wallace before you were starting of like, oh, it's not, it's where my brother went, so it's not to you what those, what those other schools were?
I desperately tried to get away. I was like, I want to get out of Cleveland. I don't want to go where I don't want to be in my brother's footsteps. And I tried my hardest, and
Yep.
the universe just pushed me right back to it. And it's like truly like my home of where I fell in love with it.
And the universe being the schools just said no, right? So you auditioned for about 4 or 5 of those schools or whatever you did, and they said no.
Yes, I got rejected from everywhere, and I was devastated.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And what were your parents like at the time? So were they supportive of, I guess you wanting to do this, but also then like, what was that experience like of like, oh, I got all these no's and I guess I'll go to this school that is in my backyard.
I was headstrong. There wasn't a lot of like guessing on my part, you know what I mean? And it all has to do with my brother. I just knew what I was getting into. I knew how treacherous New York was for him, adapting to New York. So when I decided to do this, I was like, I'm going to freaking make this work my way. I was very clear with them. And my mom's a college counselor. She's like, what are your backups? What are your safeties? I'm like, gap year.
Mm-hmm.
Gap year is my safety. She's like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't just say that. And I'm like, yes, I can. I'm not going to waste your money in majoring in advertising for a year to then
Mm-hmm.
try to go to a music theater school again. But I was devastated. It was a really
Yeah.
hard time.
But then you end up getting into and going to what many students now would think of as one of their top schools. I
Right,
mean,
right,
when we come now to, we don't have this is what our list of top, but we see when our students bring in schools, often you see like which are the schools that they come in with when they bring in 6 or 7 schools. Baldwin Wallace very often on the list. Also, our very first podcast guest was Vicky Bussard, our very first
yes.
college guest. Now. But so tell me about the experience. So what was now this? What might not have seemed like the dream for you at the time, but then it turned out to be, you said, a home for you and a positive
Yeah.
experience.
It felt like I think I really wanted the experience of going in as a stranger and people being like, wow, and I just didn't have that. And so the experience was
Because people already knew you. You felt like the
yes,
people on campus, like, what's your brother's name?
yeah, Mitch McCarrell.
You're Mitch's brother. It'd be like, what's up? Oh, it's Mitch's brother.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
perfect.
yes. And Vicky was like, I have been waiting for you to audition for the past 7 years. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, great, thanks.
and it was just a different time. Like, I remember going to BW, knowing the program well, knowing it was like cooking with gas. It was right when it was like popping off. But I knew going into BW, I was like, there's not one male alumni whose career I want, which was like a huge kind of turning point for me, because I was like, I have to drive this. I can't.
Right. You have to be that male alumni that now people looking forward go,
I
I
just
want to
gotta
be like
like
Chris McCarrell.
carve my own path through this training, and I really used it rather than like just sitting on the conveyor belt being like, well, if I just do everything right, I'll pop out on the other side like Gavin Creel. You know what I mean? Like there was none of that. So I really had like a firm hand on the steering wheel and really like used the heck out of everything that program had to offer, which was so much.
And from what I understand from having dove deep down the rabbit hole of your TikTok, which we'll get into certainly in the second half, you really have a great deal of vocal expertise, and I would say more than I think many very strong musical theater performers. Not every really strong singer necessarily has that much knowledge and expertise about their voice. Do you feel like that was because of maybe specifically the Bachelors of Music at Baldwin Wallace? Is that where you feel like you were getting a lot of that, or is it more about continued training after? Where do you feel like you landed at that point where you go, I really know my stuff vocally?
It's a couple things. Definitely being around, because we were like right next to, the violinists, the clarinetists, the piano virtuosos, just being around those brains. It's a much more mathematical kind of vibe going on. So we could really like nerd out just about the science of music, and my teachers like really were just freaking nerds about the science of sound, not necessarily the science of singing.
I would say so are you, right? I mean, it seems like you sometimes, I'm seeing some of it couched in kind of fun contemporary language, but you're giving me a lot of nerdery, even though you're like doing it sassy. But I'm like, this is really complex vocal expertise that you're giving me, even though you're doing it fun.
Totally. I mean, when I say like in high school I was taking high level classes, I was like a math, physics, acoustic nerd, chemistry who just loved theater. Like I was not like history, English at all. Like I've wanted to like figure out how everything freaking worked and why it worked.
You got all that vocal nerdery and maybe musical expertise. Is there anything that you feel like from the program, if you could now go back being a professional actor, is there anything that you go, I wish this program had a little bit more of this. I wish I could add a little bit more into this program now.
I think this applies to pretty much, I think, every program. The biggest switch, and I think about this all the time, in college and in high school, you're usually performing material really, really well. And usually the higher pressure situation is, the higher, how can I say that?
Now we're getting into physics. So E equals pressure, pressure times acceleration plus mass divided by, this is really getting into it. Yeah. The higher pressure situation, I'm with you.
But usually the higher the pressure of the situation, the more you prepare and know the material. Then you get lobbed into New York and you're literally going into Broadway auditions with some of the most important people in theater, and you got the music 2 days ago. So I wish, I'm still uncomfortable unless I have like weeks to like run it in the space with the people in front of me. I wish I built a muscle of being more comfortable flying by the seat of my pants on material I barely know, because once I know the material.
Yeah, it's so interesting that it's the way we choose to audition and find out how people get jobs, given that like that is such a rare skill set that you would need. When do you need to perform? I mean, I guess maybe you're swinging in and during COVID, you have 2 days to practice, go. But for the most part, it's like you get a lot of time to practice, and we're not seeing your improv skills. We're seeing your ability with the time and with it's a weird thing that we choose to audition.
Yeah, it's just kind of like the devil that you got to deal with, because like what's the other? But I wish there was more awareness of just like, this is a completely different skill set, and people who are great at this might give the exact same performance after a month of rehearsal, and then other people can craft like a masterpiece and can barely remember lyrics in an audition room. uh, but it's so stressful. It's just a consistent stress of your life of just barely knowing.
Well, talk to me about those early
So
days. Here we are, I guess, a decade ago, given that you've named yourself and your age. My God. Um, so it's a decade ago. You've come out. You're not exactly Gavin Creel as you maybe thought you were going to be, but you're yourself, right? What are those early? You're 22, 23. How are you hitting the pavement in New York City? How are you figuring it out? You're going to book Les Mis pretty soon in the grand scheme of things. How's all that happening for you?
it was absolute chaos. And it was a different time, I
You
just
keep
see
saying it was a
how.
different time. It wasn't that long ago.
I
You
know,
told us
but it
how long
really
ago
has.
it
A
was.
lot has changed,
A lot
especially
has
with
changed.
like people navigating the industry fresh out of college now. It's a completely just the amount of work
Yes.
happening. But I
Agreed.
was auditioning literally every other day.
Uh-huh.
It was chaos because it's right
You,
when you're
you have an
fresh
agent.
in.
You've booked an agent out of Showcase, and they're sending you out on stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Uh-huh.
got a really great one, and he was like just gung ho
You don't have to
with.
whisper it, Chris. You're like, I got a really, really great one. It's okay. It's fantastic. That's the
Well,
goal.
I freaking
Yeah.
love him. Ben
Okay.
Sands, and he was brand new at his agency at the time. So he brought me and Sierra in, and we were the two people he ever brought on to this new agency that he moved up
Mm-hmm.
to. So he was like basically managing us, me and
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Renee. So literally every other day auditions. Um, Casting is trying to basically stress testing you to figure out your
Uh-huh.
vibe. So, I'm going in for like jock roles, like stuff that like now they're like, oh my God, Chris could not pull that off if he wanted to. And it was insanity. And I tried to be
Uh-huh.
like a grade A student, and I would prepare and I would sleep and I would walk in and I would just bomb it. And so I gave up. I literally gave up. I just
Huh.
started like,
You gave up preparing, you mean?
I gave up trying to look polished
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because I literally didn't have the time or the energy. I was like walking from having a monologue prepared to having 4 songs ready. It was just like
Uh-huh.
chaos. So,
Yep.
it was really just like a chaotic, controlled stumble of me trying not to embarrass myself. And I accidentally was myself because I didn't have any energy.
Right. You stumbled into
I
authenticity.
didn't have any
Yeah.
energy to manipulate how I was seeming.
Uh-huh. You mean, and maybe some of those, especially those different roles where you're like, I'm going to try to be a
Right.
jock, and you're giving them something where, like, which I'm sure vocally you can give them that, but you're like, that's not really energetically who I am. So I'm putting on this fake thing. And then as you lose that and actually are Chris, we get to go, oh, I see what to do with Chris. I see where you fit. I see how this
Exactly.
works.
And I think if I only had one audition a week, I would have really like filtered
Uh-huh.
my, even how I walk in or like interacted with
Uh-huh.
the team. You know what I mean? Uh
It's so hard. We talked about with a couple of different casting directors that, and it's hard, I think, from their end to give that advice. But I do think it is such a tricky balance of like, how much do I show the role you're
mm,
asking me for? But it's also the first time you're meeting me, so I want to show you Charlie. But I do want to book this role. It'd be great to book the role. Like it's like finding that, even though it's probably an outside shot, because this is a bit of a
yeah.
stretch for me. That's a really tricky
And I
balancing act.
mean, this is like a huge thing that is not really talked about that much, but also being gay. Like, there's a huge pressure that I think every gay guy in theater can relate to, where you kind of try to cover it up when you walk into the room if you're auditioning for a
Right.
romantic lead. And I got to
Right.
the point where I even gave that up. I was not like trying to butch up Chris to be like, oh, I can be
Right.
Marius. And theater,
Right.
thank God, is ahead enough where the teams could
Yes.
actually see you as a person and be like, yeah, that's Chris, but you should see his Marius. You know what I mean?
Totally. And maybe in butching up yourself or butching up Marius, you actually would not be playing your best version of Marius, right? Like,
Yeah.
because in some ways, like what Marius is there's a lot of a feat to him that works, and there's a lot of poetry, and him being a
Yeah.
kind of bro would be like,
Yeah.
what? That doesn't work for this part.
But even just yourself, it's like how you walk into rooms. You're very aware of like what you're
Yeah.
giving off and like what secrets you're letting out about you as a human, and let
Uh-huh.
alone once you start acting,
Yep.
what the character you made is.
Well, and it's such a skill set to let people in, especially to your point, E equals pressure times mass acceleration. When you're feeling the stress, like it is really hard to walk in a room. You want to be seen well, but to be seen. And any of those things that you do to say, I don't want them to see this part, you put up a wall, and then it's just like I don't get to know Charlie as well because Charlie's not really here. Charlie's showing his representative, not Charlie showing
Yeah.
Charlie. Yeah.
And like, yeah.
What about, so early on, were you doing any crazy, were you waiting tables while you're doing all this? Or were you like, nope, I get to be an actor all the time for those early days?
Short answer is no. Short answer is I came into the city with $4,000
Yep.
and I never worked. I got Les Mis within 4 months.
Yep.
Longer answer is I like planned for that a little bit. So sophomore year, an agent was like, what are you doing this summer? And I was like, summer stock. And he's like, don't do that. Come to the city and audition and I'll represent you for the summer. And I was like, well, that's great experience. So I'll just do that. So I went and did that. And I auditioned, every other day for an entire summer. I didn't get one call back. And no one was like, that's a vibe. Everyone was like, you are so loud. You have one color. You're just like, you kind of come in and you just like throw it to the walls.
We already told you you're not good enough to get to Michigan. What are you doing? You're more reject. You're just like, I'm getting nothing but rejection.
Right. Just rejection. And I was like, so I took like one workshop with the casting director and was just like, do you have any other colors than just like vibrato, belt, loud? And I was like, oh my God, not really. I
didn't know the colors would be needed.
I was
thought it
like,
would be singing.
textures, what?
No,
and
absolutely.
So I went back to school being like, I need to step this up or I'm going to. And meanwhile, I have my brother who's 7 years ahead, who's waiting tables, trying to make it work. I'm like, I got to really freaking over nail this launch into the city. So it's not like I just stumbled in the city and was like, oh my God, like I just got Broadway immediately. Like this was a very strategic. I trained the heck out of my last 2 years at school, getting, pop rock textures in my voice, like really creating kind of my own curriculum with my voice teacher of like over, like just putting extra gas in this tank and kind of redid my entire voice the last 2 years. So,
well, and I think some strategy to come even with $4,000 and coming with a plan, maybe from having seen your brother, like that's where we often talk about how hard it is for people to land in New York City. Sometimes it takes you a full year to even figure out how to live and how to get a roommate and figure out, all that kind of stuff. That it can be hard to be doing that while you're doing. Blessedly, you have this great agent and you're auditioning every other day, but doing all the life skill stuff while you do that is really tricky. It's tough to wait tables and.
I don't know how I did it.
What a world. But so there you are, 4 months in, you book Lightning Thief. This is terrible. Meghan, we have to get some people who, thank you, book Les Mis. I was just going to say, but Talia also was our most recent guest, she booked almost immediately out of school. So we have to have more people who struggle more because it's more common to struggle than to book right out of school. This is not the common path.
I'm sorry. I'll bring in more tortured artists.
Thank you, please. I was like, Talia, when did it get bad? She was like, never. It's fantastic all the time.
God.
The pandemic.
I was like, good, great, you got sick. Anyway, that was really, what, you got sick? You almost died? Who cares? But no, you booked Lightning. I keep wanting to say that you booked Lightning Thief 4 months, but you didn't. You booked Les Mis, and you ran that for a while, yeah? What was that experience now, hitting the Broadway debut so early? A pretty big checkbox, I'm sure, on the big list, happening at 22.
It was, frickin' frick. It's just, it's hard. Oh my gosh. It's just everything you wanted. It's literally just I got a rehearsal process because people don't understand the difference between like, being in an original cast, like the original revival cast, how different of a creative experience.
Right. The original revival cast. That's even its own weird thing of like, it's not the original, but I am reviving originally, not coming in.
The fact that like, I wasn't even just plugged into a Broadway show, but I got to like truly make my own track. I was also understudying a lead. I got to be in rehearsal with Tony winners and people I looked up to, like, oh my God, every day I was just so lit up. And that team knew the real me. They talk about the audition story online, but I was a stumbling mess, and, running by the seat of my pants. And I was definitely just giving Chris because I was blacking out for half of it. So they knew me and they truly adored me. So I didn't even have to put on a filter of like, you know, hyper professionality. They were like, yeah, Chris just came out of school. And so I just felt so supported, and it was just a crazy creative environment. And then, you know, you perform on the Tonys, you open the show, the reviews come out, and you go through the whole life cycle in the good and the bad. When people start leaving, the show doesn't feel like the show you made anymore.
And you were covering Marius from the beginning and then took it over?
Yes. So, yeah, I was the OG Marius cover, but on stage. So I was one of the Barricade Boys.
And that can't be the name of your Barricade Boys? That was your character?
Jolie. I was Jolie.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Jolie.
I was so proud of Jolie. I was like, I am Jolie. And then a year in, they were like, we want you to come to finals to take over Marius. And like by that time, there was already some like buzz cooking. Like people were like coming in. I like knew something was up. Like people were coming, like directors were coming in when I would go on. I was like, something's cooking. They're looking at me. Yeah. And then I was in finals. It was me and another dude.
And the shout out, who lost the part? Tell us who. No, I'm kidding.
Well, they offered it. It was Colton Ryan. It was two BW boys. It was
I know.
Colton Ryan literally just graduated from BW and was coming in hot. And it was me and him for Marius. And then he got offered my role. And then he became like a huge freaking star. Then he was the first cover for Ben Platt.
Correct. Right. No, but then tell us about that. So, because I do think most people don't know. All right. So then when you take over, what kind of rehearsal do you get as Marius now, you know, in this new role?
And I was super freaking lucky. I came in with a new Eponine, a new Cosette, not a new Cosette, I think came later. Basically, it was a big cast turnover all at once. And Les Mis, they know how shows get stale. So they know that like we got to reinvigorate the show every time a huge cast change happens. So we basically had a rehearsal process, full blown, coming up with new blocking, working like just like chef's kiss. Like other people and other producers literally just can't afford that. Like we literally had the lighting designer come in and relight the show around our cast.
Yes, that is unusual.
Very unusual. Because Cameron's like, I don't care money. Just make it alive.
I don't care money. Make it good.
Make it alive. So I was super lucky with that. It was basically like re-originating.
Right, you got to recreate the role.
Yeah.
Well, it's something like Elizabeth talked about that a lot in coming back to Jagged after the pandemic. That she and Heidi were so close, they really spent so much time going, you know, talking. Here's what this is, and you know, she kind of watched Heidi struggle putting on her shoes on, and then when she came back on, she had to put her shoes back on that Heidi had changed. Of course, I know. So she's like, I'm now doing a show where I'm like justifying choices that I originated. That like it's really tricky. Of like because Heidi had to make it her own. She had to make it work for her, and so then she's like, but how do I take it back? And now I kind of miss that the way I did it, you know, 2 years ago. And stuff is really tricky.
It is very tricky. Like just roles being passed down from people to people to people. And I think long running shows kind of understand like that really requires a lot more attention.
It's like season 2, season 3. It needs a new refresh each time when we come back. Well, then let's talk about what I keep trying to say, which is Lightning Thief. Let's talk about you getting to originate a lead role on Broadway, which talk about a dream that is, I mean, that's like at the top of basically everyone's bucket list. When I say like, what's next for you career-wise? So many people are like, I want to originate a role on Broadway. And especially if it's a lead role, a titular role, my God. What was that experience? How did the casting happen? And then what was the experience of actually getting to do that show?
Oh my gosh, these questions, I'm like, oh my God, I could write a whole book. Okay, so casting was this little weird show. Like, I'm always like, if Les Mis was a ship, it was a freaking unsinkable like aircraft carrier. And then Lightning Thief is literally like the sailboat that could. So I'm coming off this like aircraft carrier. I'm like, off-Broadway show. Literally, it had a note in the audition being like, actors will not have to be part of the stage crew and put up and
Oh,
take down the set. I was like, what the heck
you're
is
like,
this talking? And they're like,
of
oh,
course I won't.
Theater Works has tours sometimes where they have to. And I'm like, whatever. I like the music. I learned Good Kid in the shower the day of. My roommate was also a music theater guy and was like, you literally learned that in the shower before you went. And I'm like, I know. So I went, I did it. And there's sometimes scripts and songs literally just resonate with your DNA so well. It's all so easy.
Yeah.
Like it was the easiest thing to act. It was the easiest like comedy to figure out. The songs sat in my voice. It was just like special.
Well, and I
And
can say, having seen you, I saw you opening night, and now getting to know you as a person, that integration is very clear that happened in the show. I don't feel like, oh my God, you're so different than you were. Like, nope, I feel like I'm meeting Percy, basically. It feels very similar. Like you are that person in the show, which is, I think of that as a great compliment to give someone, actually, that like, it wasn't like, who is this person that I spent 2 hours with and who am I talking to now?
yeah, it was like, and I kind of knew that this was going to be kind of the role that was just going to be like my guts up there, because I love roles that are so different than me that I go out there and I'm like, this one you just got to make it as much what is freaking different about you. And I walked out and I got the phone call like 20 minutes after I walked out
that you booked it. One audition, booked it, done.
Yeah. So by the time I got home, I was like, I got it. And my friend was like, of course you freaking did. Of course you freaking
The shower
did.
is still
You learned
running.
it in the
Come
shower.
on.
You learned it in the shower. You walk out and then you come back and you say you got it. Like,
Hey,
so
that's good vocal health, right? You're steaming as you sing. It's great. Everything is perfect.
And I sang it in 4/4. I remember that. The song's in 3/4. It changes between 3/4 and 4/4. And I kept it in 4/4. Anyway, we laugh about that.
It worked out.
Like the audio of me singing Good Kid in 4/4 and the piano player trying to like figure out what the heck to do with me.
Well, and you get to originate this role. So of course this is, you're taking it from off-Broadway to Broadway, but this is now a from an IP perspective, this exists in the world, right? These are not books that I was familiar with, but I know they were like a huge deal. If you were maybe a little younger than me, maybe actually probably around your age, were these books that you had read as a kid? How did you interact with like knowing there's movies, there's books, there's expectations from some fans coming to see the show that they're not going to see Chris up there. They're going to see their idea of Percy, who they read about when they were 7 years old or whatever that was. How does that, if it weighs on you at all, how did that affect your performance or in the rehearsal room? Was that stuff that you guys talked about?
Well, what's good is coming off of Les Mis and Marius and how I approached Marius, I was like, I'm doing it the same way. Like I had no relationship to the book. I read the first book. I was like, oh, this kid is me. And then I just went in how I always freaking go in. It's like my only job is to make sure this character makes sense. If you just make them make sense, you will have a fully developed, weird, idiosyncratic character. So I'm like, he's got to feel like he has ADD. He's got to feel like he has dyslexia. He's got to feel like he's truly a loner at school. There's got to be a reason teachers hate him. Like, there's so much to work with. Like, why would I ever watch a movie? I'm like, I got a plate full of stuff I'm problem solving. Why would I watch how someone else problem solved it? So no, I put my blinders on and there's not one, and then I just go through and I'm like, every single freaking detail. I don't let one thing slip where I don't make it make sense somehow in the character.
And did there end up being a large Venn diagram overlap of people who were Percy Jackson fans and musical theater, Percy the musical fans? Because it seems like there's a cult following for both. I mean, people love the show. It's now being produced. Every high school in the damn country is doing Percy Jackson, right? So and people I think have a relationship with the musical separate from the books. Was there a big like stage door then overlap for you? Like, oh my God, I read these when I was 5.
Huge. And we truly did not know. Like, to all of us, this was just a scrappy off-Broadway show. Like, when I got the show, it is, if I knew then what I knew now, it was just this weird weird off-Broadway show. And then opening night is when we were like, oh shoot, like the people came and they came hard. Yeah, and it was, I mean, I have so many stories of people being like, Percy got me through middle school. A lot of people's first time to a musical. A lot of people that were terrified of a musical adaptation of a book they love, and then realizing how musicals can actually like elevate or like give a new spin on something. So people started like respecting the art form. They're like, oh my God, we thought you were just going to butcher this and make it like a musical, but it's actually really creative and fun, and it feels exactly like the books. And we're like, yeah, musicals have the ability to not butcher their source material. Like, we can pull it off. So much overlap.
Like for like the other musical book you did. I mean, Les Mis was first a book to somebody before
A
it
very
was
long
the
book.
musical that it
Very,
was.
very long
A
book.
very long book, which I didn't ask you if you read. I wouldn't want to try to trap you. Well, then what about, how was the roller coaster then of, oh my gosh, so off Broadway, couldn't have expected any of what had happened, and then boom, a Broadway thing happened, and then a pretty quick closing, right? In terms of just the journey of like, oh my God, way beyond my dreams, and then what was that experience of boom, and it's over that fast?
It was so quick. It was like a month run in like a 250 seat theater. But it started having like this like, you know, cultural clout in a way. And so when we released the album, the sales were crazy. And we thought there was always talk of an off-Broadway transfer, open-ended, you know, like New World, or Stage 42. When we closed, we didn't think that was our closing. We thought we were moving in a week, and then it fell through.
Right. Because it is a little bit of a porous line. I mean, it's less of a good salary for the actors, but the line between a small Broadway house and some of those big standing off-Broadway places where you say they can run open-ended, it's not that huge of a difference as an actor in terms of the experience of what you're doing.
Yeah, and just the idea of it being open-ended, because it just felt like the problem was never ticket sales or people being interested in it. So it just felt like stupid that it wasn't being done anywhere. And then you know, your heart just gets, you know, hopes go up, hopes go down, and then they announce the tour. And I'm like, yeah, because the people that this show needs to be seen by are, you know, the families that aren't organized enough to come to New York. The show isn't made for, you know, rich families bringing their kids to New York for like a little family fun day. So we were going, it felt
Not
like
Lion
it
King.
aligned with this heart of the show to take it on tour. And I was like, I would do that. Cause I was like, I'm not touring. I'm not just going to go tour, but I'm like, the Lightning Thief, I'll freaking tour that. And again, it was always supposed to go to an off-Broadway open-ended run. Always. And then last second, they were like, we're going into the Longacre. And I was like, wait. I did not make this character for the Broadway stage. Like, he's so kind of gay. He's crazy. He's so, he's a big swing of a character. And they were like, we're going to Broadway with it. And I literally panicked. I was like, oh my God. I don't know if I'm ready to like put this character up in front of everyone on Broadway. And I was like, should I make him more of just like a heartthrob hero, you know? Should I make him more of like just something more palatable to everyone? And then I remember being like, YOLO, you only live once. We're going in exactly how we started this. And
I guess
I remember being terrified and just being like, reviews might shred me. I don't freaking care. I'm going in as lanky, ADHD, kind of androgynous young kid trying to save his mom. And looking back, that's like honestly the like little win of like that I'm most proud of is that I truly just like took a breath and dove hard into maintaining the scrappiness that we had building the show while it was on Broadway, because it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Well, and it just highlights how little control we have as actors. Like you have control over that of what you want to bring in as to, what I want to do with the character. But casting you have no control over, and where the show goes or all the money behind it, unless you are choosing to also produce the show as well. Like you just don't have that control. You don't get to say no. I don't want to go with Longacre. You don't have that option. It's come with it or not. All you have is the yes or the no.
Yeah, and it was just a freaking dream, like start to finish, truly like just a freaking dream. I know that's boring to hear, but it really just creatively, the team, how much I adored our producers, how much they tried to keep ticket prices down to make it more accessible, who the show was designed for. Like, it just really goes to show that Broadway and theater is not always this like, money hungry, disrespecting our actors. We're working under a thumb of some big producer. It's rarely that, to be honest. But
most Broadway producers are not doing that specifically to get rich. Of course, they tend to be money people, but if you choose to be a Broadway producer, it's normally some love that you've got for the art and not just like, I want the money. Give me the
no,
game.
it's like literally, what is it? Sadomasochism. It's literally just like,
and sometimes it's a little bit of vanity for some of them if I want to, have a project and all those things. But I think it's not boring at all to hear that it's a dream, because I do think we spend a lot of time trying to make sure people see the ups and downs of a career and see how hard it is, and because people have the dream of quote unquote Broadway, but it's also nice to know that the dream can be wonderful too. I mean, some of that I'm like, obviously the good part's wonderful, but like it's worth sitting in that for a second and saying, when it hits and you get the thing that you want, it can be amazing and a positive experience, and not just, oh God, it's so hard, and the next one's hard, and then you still don't have another job, and all that part of it.
Yeah. And I really engineered, I also like I always try to be like, I'm not just stumbling into this or through this. Like, this was all very kind of engineered. Like, how I trained, how seeing my brother 7 years ahead, how I was like, I don't want the careers of just, bouncing from show to show. I trained exactly for what I wanted. And so then when a show got me and I excelled in the areas of like origination, going hard, taking big swings, being fearless, even under huge, highly visible situations. And then looking back and I'm like, that was exactly what I wanted. It's like kind of hard to like see where it started. It really started like my freshman year of college. So I always like try to urge people to like, be careful what you get good at, because you might get hired to do it, So it's like, get good at what you truly want to do. And I'm so happy that my career so far has aligned with exactly what I intended to do with my talent.
There's something so beautiful about that word intention. I'm going to shout out Thomas Douglas, who was my voice teacher at Carnegie Mellon, who's gotten a lot of shout outs on this podcast. I got to send it to him now. But he always used to say, like, when we did something really good, he would stop and go, wait, you did that on purpose, right? Because I think sometimes we would do things, we'd be like, oh, I guess it sounded good, whatever, right? And he really wanted us to line up like, that was on purpose. Like, be clear that you did that really worked. You worked to make that happen. It wasn't just, in some ways also, he was making his own. It's not just your phenomenal talent and that you are so special and that this isn't something that happened to you. It's something that the work that you did to this point made that thing happen, right? And that lining up kind of your intention with when the result then works, to be able to own that and go, this was my intention. My intention was Percy Jackson, and it happened. And to start that process when you're training to go, it's as opposed to like, I guess it could happen to me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Like I'm
now getting into parenting. This is basically, now I have a 1.5-year-old. So now it's like, no, it's not because you're smart. It's because you tried hard. It's because you worked hard that you did. Like, what are we complimenting? What are we rewarding?
Yeah. And it's very easy to like look at certain, timelines and just be like, oh, that happened, but
or you're so talented and therefore it just happened to you, as opposed to, but you, at the top of any field, the top of sports, top of art, you also worked hard. There's nobody who's just born with it and does no work. Like, some people have to work harder, of course, and some people are born with maybe more God-given ability, but all the people who you look up to and admire have some kind of work ethic, even if in your case it's only in the shower, but still.
And sustainability. I'm like, I always push that too. Like, as much about it is working hard, it's also taking care of yourself and respecting yourself for sustainability. So it's like sometimes I prepare just 3 hours before an audition because that's all I got. So that's a whole other combo. But yes.
And then what about post Percy Jackson? Was there what were the conversations with representatives, or what, in terms of your next intention? Was there a big next step in terms of how Chris is going to try to move in the world? I mean, that you have now checked off a huge bucket list thing, right? And then are you thinking about what is the next big public thing that I do? Or how are you thinking about how do I move forward in my career?
Giving away my secrets.
Well, that's what you do on your TikTok. You give away all your secrets. Let's give away more. Come on.
Yeah, the big thing, I feel like I showed that, I can handle the creative process. I can handle originating. I can handle, kind of holding a show through its life. So we played the next Evan Hansen. I wanted to work with like top talent, huge money, originating, developing it in Chicago for a few months, I wanted it originating on a new hit.
Not a whoops, this came from off Broadway to Broadway, but this is intended to Broadway.
Exactly. That kind of, so like I wanted the creative process that Evan Hansen had and the success Evan Hansen had, but a new show, a new role that I could really be in the DNA of.
You're saying wanted. Is this no longer a want?
It's just with the pandemic, it's like it got all put on hold. So I'm just thinking about right when I left.
I'm just saying, can we respark? Can we respark the flame?
Oh, it's sparked.
This is what's coming next year. Let's just come on. Why not?
It's definitely sparked. We're just it's hard to go.
We're just adding some oxygen.
We're slowly getting really back into the hardcore ring. So that was always the aim. And then there was also a big push for like, we gotta get you on TV film. And I was always kind of blurry on that. I'm like, okay, maybe. And then during the pandemic, I was in LA for 8 months of it, and on accident. But one of the biggest things that I learned from the pandemic is just how kind of uninterested artistically I am in TV and film. So I like kind of reaffirmed my clarity and my love for theater and like what is next. It's all sales.
Yep. I mean, something we talk a lot about of if you are not clear on your intention, your representatives will always push you toward TV.
Yes.
That'll just be the natural gravity. It's just like there is more money, more realistic, sustainable money that's going to happen for them on a Netflix show than there's going to be on Broadway. Even the top end Broadway pay, it's just not the same level that they can reach.
And it is such a different craft. Like I giggle now when people, these music theater schools are like, you take one class in TV and then every kid graduating is like, I'm also very interested in pursuing TV and film. I'm like, it's a whole different craft. It's literally like complete, like I took a peek into the mechanics of it and was like, oh, that is too much to figure out for me. I'm staying in my lane.
I mean, not unlike how you might feel if an LA actor was like, I guess let's try Broadway. Let's try it. And you're like, there's a lot of work I've been doing to get to this point.
Don't even get me started. Yes. And how people just gloss on. They're like, oh, I know how to act. Put me on Broadway. I'm like, good the frick luck. Good luck.
Good the frick luck.
Good the frick luck.
Let's use that as a toss to a break. We'll run an ad or two, and then we're going to come back and chat about TikTok. This is what people have scrolled to this point in the episode. This is what they really want to hear. We'll do that on the back end of the break. All right, we are back from break with Chris McCarrell. We both have Coke Zeros in hand. This, hopefully the ad that we just ran was not for Pepsi or something, but we're just doing our best here. But can we talk about TikTok? Because I will say, Chris, despite having originated a lead role on Broadway, when all of our students saw you at Unified, and let's be honest, a shocking number of our parents too, they didn't say, "Oh my God, that's Chris McCarrell from Lightning Thief." They were like, "That's Chris McCarrell from TikTok." Like all of them. Like they were like, "Oh my God, I follow him. Oh my God." Like it was like you were the biggest celebrity, all because of TikTok. So I'm going to ask, what inspired this from you? You know, maybe specifically TikTok. I want to get into some of the mechanisms of it, but also just like what inspired the impulse to share these granular and specific tips online? Because I'm going to say, from my experience in scrolling and the little social media I've consumed, this is way less so self-promotional than most accounts I see, right? This is not like you mostly singing and then, oh, here's a tip or two, or here's a tip that leads me to my coaching. It almost all is like me giving away the gold, giving away the juice, right? You could just watch the TikTok and learn something. So what inspired that? I guess I'd love to hear about that.
Something happens. Something happens when you get a little older, around 30, and all your friends experience it. We all experienced it together, where usually people start thinking about having kids. You know, there's something where just being self-serving and being in the rat race that is just helping yourself and trying to get ahead and playing the game and playing the game. The idea of recommitting to that for another decade just doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound fun at all. So, my way was, I was like, I'm going to start like putting an eye on the next generation coming up and seeing what they need and like start supporting like the next generation. Cause I think it's a responsibility if you've done well. If you've had kind of like the insider scoop to see exactly what is needed, what is being utilized, to pass the baton on in a way.
But I would say that I think leads a lot of people to teaching. I totally agree with the impulse that you had, which many people have, of going, I want to give back. I want to give something back now. But often also I want some sustainability for myself economically. And so do I have this side business that also kind of works for me as a vocal coach or a teacher, or maybe I teach at a university, right? But what led to the TikTok of it all? What led to give it away now, you know?
It all started, my friend gave me the idea. Because I found this TikTok and it was like, you should have no tension in your voice ever. And I was like, oh my God, shut up. And so I posted that video on Instagram, and then I listed every vocal technique that required tension and what big singer uses it that we know. And I was basically breaking down how you need tension to sound modern. And my friend was like, this isn't an Instagram story. This is a TikTok. This is a TikTok. And I was like, LOL, can you imagine? And so I just made a draft once of like a vocal tip, and I put it out, and the second one got like 50,000 hits. So I was like, then it just became easy. I was like, oh, if that gooped you, I got a whole ton of stuff. And so it just became this thing. And then I just followed the natural, I really came at it as like support, you know, and then I just followed where people needed it. People were like, do you do coachings? You'd be a great teacher. Da, da, da. So I just followed it. So I opened up some coachings, and then that happened. And then being at Pearl Studios like every Sunday and Saturday now, that's how I found out about the fund. But all of the energy was just, where am I needed within this next generation to just help a little bit. It's treacherous.
Other than the coaching, which of course you can monetize to some extent, are you thinking about monetizing, or maybe have you already monetized the TikTok itself? Something one of our former MTCA students, who's now a big TikTok star, has talked about successfully having monetized his TikTok, though that becomes its own thing. Is that something that you are considering?
Money's always hard, because anything you put money on changes the vibe of doing it. Makes it less fun, makes it feel like a job, puts pressure on it. When it's not going well, it feels like, oh my gosh. So I currently pay my rent through my coachings that I do in the city. So that's kind of my way to like monetize it. I don't even like that word, but just support myself.
Right.
Just baseline support by giving away something of much more value than what it is. But no, I don't want to get into the game of like trying to get millions of hits on my videos and
Right. And now you're going to be using a belt box, and belt box will be giving you money or something like that. No, that's not happening.
right. That I don't even want to get into that game. I have a very clear
Tag this episode March 8th. A couple months from now, we're just going to check back in to see
LOL
well, there'll be a belt box on
sponsor.
Chris's. Let's be honest. When we see it, we'll be like, there it is. Oh, there's a
If
Fontus
anything,
lozenge.
I'm
We've
like,
seen that before.
this post is sponsored by ibuprofen and no cough drops and a shot.
This is by showers, by me taking a shower. What about, so you obviously, your friend told you, hey, you should be going to TikTok. Were you then consuming TikTok yourself? Like, how did you, because I think you seem, from my very limited understanding of social media, but you seem to have really gotten the style, it may have been natural for you, of what TikTok is, even with like the literal technical, like these quick cut edits and jumps. And like, to me, that's, I've only seen that on TikTok, or maybe now on Instagrams that are copying TikToks. But like, how did you figure out the mechanics of it for maybe some of our people who are like, I'd want to create, but I don't kind of know how that would happen?
Yes, I was definitely on TikTok, and then I was so annoyed at all the content trying to give tips for music theater. I was like, you guys are so far off. I don't even know where to start. And then naturally, like my DNA, I was kind of set up for this. I've been waiting. Oh my gosh. I have been waiting for things to get a little more chaotic and messy, like for that to be in style. And so people want really hard hitting information from people not just being a polished professional version of themselves, but just like really throwing down how they think and what they know. So the actual style, the tone of it was so in my DNA. And you really throw it to the wind, because growing up, like social media, it was a very polished version of that was very likable, hireable, dateable. And TikTok, I'm like, I'm never going to be hired again. I'm never going to date again. And I'm never going to be liked again. You know, you got to go in with just that, toss it to the wind. It truly feels like you're blowing up your entire reputation. I was worried about like my agent seeing it. I was worried about casting seeing it. I was worried about, other actors seeing it. And something coming out of the pandemic, I'm like, I got nothing to lose. So I just came in being like, this is all bullshit. Start thinking like this, start thinking like that. That's so vanilla and annoying. It's a very different game than what our parents were taught, and even what millennials were doing. It's
okay. How dare you? Don't throw the word millennials out there like it's a bad thing. Unbelievable.
Well, there's just a lack of professionality.
Yes. No, it's something that makes it such a hit for you. I mean, my first experience, my first thought watching your TikTok videos was, oh my God, the camera angle you've chosen is like aggressively under the chin. And I don't know if that's just because like you are so skinny and so you can pull that off, but it felt like, I was like, I just not used to seeing that on like Instagram or whatever. Like you would have the, looking down on me, attractive angle of my face. I'm getting all like waddle from you. It's all just full gobble under the neck, but it's like makes it feel more raw and truthful. And like, it's just like a person talking. They didn't set this up to make it be some, beautiful video. There's something so cool about that.
Yeah, I really don't think about it at all. Like, I just care about what I'm saying. Everything else, and it's literally because it takes less effort to like keep my phone below me. And I feel like if anyone saw me through my window with like my hand up, I would look like an influencer. So I'm like, I don't want to look like an influencer. I just want to keep my phone like I'm reading a text, but I'm recording a video. I don't know.
No, there's something so cool about that. Yeah. But what about, I've noticed like tonally in the videos, I mean, there's such great information, but it does seem like, and I don't know if this is a TikTok thing, you are giving an element of like fun certitude. It's very fun, but it's like, sometimes it sounds like this is this. Do you ever feel like you're worried about like, the thing that I would think is like, okay, but I have to equivocate this. I have to say, except for some singers, which this might not be true, except for like, there's no except for you. It seems like it's often, even as I heard you like reading the, tips you learn from Unified. So like, this is all great information, but I have so many footnotes to be like, well, that's sometimes true, but in 2022, that would have been true, but actually I wouldn't necessarily put it in that order. It's like, how do you, there's I guess a confidence or a bravery to put that out there and be like, yeah, some people are going to be able to pick nits with me. Is that something you think about when you're doing it, especially vocally, where you're like, there's so much knowledge and people have different opinions, and you didn't say that perfectly?
Oh, I'm so aware of that. It really goes back from listening to philosophers speak, like Alan Watts. He's like, you do know I talk in much bolder claims than what is real, but that's the only way to get your attention. That's the only way to wake people up. If we get bogged down in thinking that you're going to get sued if someone's like, well, that actually didn't work for me. Like, you won't get anything out there. You won't be heard. You won't make an impact. And how I consume content that's known. I know that. Like, that's,
right.
There's
an, in my opinion, hanging around your neck always. Yeah.
Always. I think a lot of people consume information with that awareness as well, and the people who don't, I'm like,
with the in my opinion,
come on,
awareness.
like of course, like anytime people are like, well, I'm like, well, of course. But yes,
of course, it's something I have been accused of personally so much by both my partner and my best friend. Have often accused me of saying things as if they were factually true when they're not. And I always feel like I'm like, of course it's not factually true. I'm venturing an opinion. This couldn't be a fact. But that's like, you have this low voice and you're this giant guy. And so when you say, I think it feels nice today, whatever you're saying it like, it's like, it is true. Nice is true. It's something I've become so conscious of. I've tried to now like, well, actually, let's make it clear that this is, I'm stating this opinion. It was something refreshing to see people just be like, yeah, this is obviously my opinion and I'm saying it.
I mean, a lot of people are doing, it's kind of like the spirit of TikTok a little bit too. It's kind of like, you can come for me if you want, but I'm saying this. Now I'm going to be aware of that. But yes,
no, I didn't mean to now make you hyper conscious of it. It's great. It's just something I know, and I'm really not a consumer of TikTok, so that's what part of me is maybe realizing. Oh, this is what's making this successful on TikTok in a way that it just would never be said that way in a classroom,
right?
Because the tone is different, the media is different,
right? And it's also breaking down the fragility around this art form. Like, that's what I really came in swinging with too. I'm like, how I think about music theater is like painting. And it's like, like imagine like a painter being like, well, be careful. You might get carpal tunnel if you do pointillism too much. It's like, of course, if your wrist starts hurting, stop. Can we get back to the painting? And like, there's so much more to talk about if you throw away the fragility and polish that this art form has kind of created from the educational process and get back into like the dirtiness of it. And, that's boring. That's exciting. It really, I was like, I want to be like the hungover painting teacher that has like paint in his eyebrows from the night before where he was manically painting at 3 a.m. I want to be that for my voice students.
Well, and it seems like you're trying to lead with it. I mean, this is from watching a number of videos, though I've not seen the whole oeuvre of the thing. But it seems like you're also trying to kind of break down like that all this knowledge only lives at certain institutions, there's only learnable in certain ways. I mean, I think that's something that sometimes people think if you didn't go to one of those institutions, and then when you do, you're like, no, it's just the same crap. I mean, there's, yes, they teach it well, and yes, it can be really nice to be somewhere for 4 years to study your craft, but it's not like the knowledge is some secret thing that you can only get while you're 19 years old at this school, right? It's not like there's a secret, treasure chest that is only accessible at one of these universities. There's something cool about seeing it just there in your feed.
It's not so much it's the attention. That's what you really get from paying people in school is someone with a high taste level looking and caring about you, getting better. That's like truly the thing that's like locked up. It's like people's attention at you. But there's not like some little PDF where if it got leaked, everyone
Right.
would know what's up.
Yeah, then, oh no, all the trade secrets. Yeah, it's something that's, yeah, I often talk about that when our students are stressed about the amount of attention, maybe from their coaches, from their parents, and then of course when they're about to go to school, is just like, you're really going to miss it. As soon as you get out of school, you really miss like, somebody stares at me and cares about my improvement as much as I
Mhm.
care about my improvement. That's a
Yeah.
really special thing. Yeah, to have many smart people staring at you and really
And how do
paying
you
attention to
how
you.
do you come in bold enough, confident enough, and secretly cocky enough to not use that as a
Uh-huh.
crutch? Where if that was taken away, you would
Yep.
still be as bold and fearless as when you have all that attention around you.
Yep.
Like
Totally.
that's really important.
Now, given this incredible success that you have had, which really, I mean, you have to think numerically, the success you've had on TikTok is shocking, right? In terms of like, not shocking that you could pull it off, but just in terms of the now millions of people, multiple millions of people have viewed your videos, which is like way more than saw the entire run of Lightning Thief or the entire run of Les Mis for the years you were doing it, right? Like, what is that? How do you reckon with that of like, more people are seeing me in my 3 minutes under chin waddle than are seeing the fully prepped performance that I spent weeks rehearsing. Like, what does that feel like as an actor who obviously you trained for theater, not trained for,
Mhm.
3-minute TikToks?
Yes, I have I have truly never been more famous in my life, which is it's not something I really looked for, but I get stopped more on the street now than I ever
Yep.
have in my entire life, uh, which was never the point at all. But it's the way that people interact with me in person that I'm like, this is right. Because like
Mhm.
fans from seeing me on stage, there's kind of this like, starry-eyed, like, oh my God, I love you. I love you. You were so good. You're like not human. It's kind of like this
Right.
inhumanity. But people who come up to me, they have such this like warm, like thank you groundedness that it actually like really freaking lights me up, like kind of
Mhm.
not the community that I'm building, but just the interaction feels much warmer and
Mhm.
heartfelt, that when I like see it face to face, like I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people like you. I wanted to
Mhm.
at least be a voice, and they just freaking get it.
Yep.
Like the amount of people that
So
just
cool.
get what I'm saying is amazing.
Has it changed your consumption habits? Like now that you create, do you look differently at how you consume other people's work? And I also, I mean, both the consumption of other like TikToks, but also like, how do you now consume your own numbers and analytics? And like, are there compare and despairs of like, oh my God, why did this person's video get 2 million? Mine got 100,000. Or, is there any of that in your consumption of TikTok?
No, I find it really fascinating. And I'm not like, I'm not like trying, some people just it's like, just bigger, 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 bigger. I'm like, I'm totally
Right.
fine with
Well, bigger if you're trying to monetize it, right? If you're trying to say like, I'm trying to become a professional
right.
TikTok and live off of this, then you need to grow, in those.
Right. So like the strategy, differs with how big you're trying to get. But what I find really fascinating is the type of information I put out
Uh-huh.
versus how well it does is so telling, because I just think, oh, people really
Uh-huh.
needed that. Like that was a hot spot that was needed. Um, and honestly, my more complex stuff that I actually feel like is really freaking super,
Yes.
super valuable
Yes.
that no one will freaking figure out and tell you does less well than just the stuff that I'm like, oh, this is basic. Like stop starting
Yes.
words on vowels while you're singing. And
That was
everyone's like,
absolutely my
what?
observation. The stuff that I was like, oh, that's really interesting was the stuff that was least viewed. Like when I would click through it and be like, oh, this one got a million views, millions. I'm like, okay, great. But most of that was like pretty basic. The stuff that I was like, that's really smart. It had like 30,000 views. But I was like, what? How's that fair?
Yeah.
That seems, yeah. People don't want their vegetables. I guess they want the delicious dessert.
So I find, well, and it's also the demographic, when you're in high school or middle school, it's like, what are you freaking talking about? And like maybe the 10,000 people that saw that were the
That's right.
10,000 people in New York that needed it. So I'm like, great. So I find that really interesting. But no, I'm not in the whole game of like, there's such a culture right now of just like social media strategy, optimization, bigger, 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 bigger. This is literally like my outreach department. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is just
in some ways maybe helping you become more successful, that you're not, because I think you can sniff those things so easily. Anytime we've gotten kind of marketing advice, I'm like, God, but it feels like marketing. Ugh, I just like, nobody likes something that feels markety. It just feels gross and doesn't feel authentic and all that. Do you feel like, did you have any big learnings from the experience of this? What, 2 years of doing this? Something like that?
1 year.
Only 1 year?
Not even a year.
Not even, my God. Okay, so in this year of doing this, what have you learned? What do you know now that you didn't know a year ago about the TikTok of it all?
Oh my gosh. I wish I could make a tip on making TikToks.
Yes, this is what we want. We want this tip.
But I'm like, that doesn't really go with like, I never want it to be too self-aware. But I really came at it, I'm like giving away my secrets behind the secrets. But I really identify people's insecurities within the art form. And I secretly try to make that feel better. So I always like search for pain points in myself, in the industry, and then somehow give tips and advice that by the end you go, oh my gosh, that felt chaotic. It kind of felt hard hitting. I can't believe he's saying that. But secretly, I feel better about something that I was insecure about. And I think that's really what makes my content travel further and also have cut. But people are like, I love it. Like it feels warm, even though you're yelling at me.
As my experience, absolutely. You feel warm even though it's harsh. There's a harshness to it.
Because secretly the harshness is to make you feel better about an insecurity in a lot of them.
Stop beating yourself up. Yeah. Wake up.
And then also like, and because you'll know when you've hit a pain point or an insecurity and you didn't treat it with enough attention, because the backlash is fragile and it's much more treacherous water than you think. Because I've just talked about stuff, and if you just miss the mark a little bit, the backlash, like you got a few comments and people are like, so you got to be really freaking aware and like 3 steps ahead of like pain points. Because if people are insecure or angry about something and you just touch on it and just keep talking like it's not a big deal, they're like, you're so unaware of something that really affects my life. So I try to be really aware of like, oh, noted.
What is a pain point? I mean, if I don't know that word or that term, what do you mean as an example of a kind of pain point?
Like writers or like people in straight theater programs feel like music theater outshines their program. So if I talk about like how singing requires more structure than a monologue, there's going to be backlash being like, no, straight acting is also hard. I'm like, of course straight acting is hard, but like, it's like I missed a pain point. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yep. You mean, yes, people's specific insecurities or their hangups.
Yeah.
If you hit it, you're going to.
Or a writer, actors keep changing my lines. So me talking about like, you don't have to say every line perfectly. Writers are going to zoom in and be like, stop.
And you're like, this isn't for you, writers. Get off my TikTok. What about, I know we talking about in your bio, the expertise with concerts is something that you've done a lot of. What have you learned from that experience, from putting on a solo show? It seems in some ways like a TikTok, but just much longer, right? The same charisma and fun that's got to happen in storytelling, just now over the course of an hour or whatever. What has that experience been?
Freaking fun. Like my solo shows, I really think of them, I approach them like concerts. And I put a ton of priority on the sound experience,
like meaning different styles,
different styles. And there's not a lot, and sometimes there is a music theater section. But like spending a ton, like I get the best of the best when it comes to like arrangers, music directors, the band. Like I find like the more of a musical experience that feels like the nightlife of New York musically, the more successful. And then I, string together a structure. But I've learned a lot from like, I do my own thing and then I'll go to another show and I'm like, why is this not a party? Like no one's screaming, no one's, and I'm like, oh, I really do structure mine to be a party. And then people respond accordingly. But the biggest thing, it's like, you have to get out of college recital. Oh my God, y'all. we got to move past it. We could.
And that means what? That means like showing off myself vocally?
Where-
Is that the big mistake I would make if I'm trying to redo a college recital?
Where I'm like aware of your types. You know what I mean? Like I sing Lizzo and like Harry Styles at my concerts, and like I'm like imagine if I just did like Pippin, Giants in the Sky. I'm like, oh my God, this is not for teachers. Like, who's your demographic? Basically, it's like your teacher should not be your demographic of your concert.
That's really smart. I watched Elizabeth do this, and she's been in a lot of concerts the past couple of years. Of like depending on who was throwing it, basically the age group, how much of what kind of pop is going to be in it. Like it can't be too much modern pop if they're all over 60. It's like, what are they going to want to hear, and what are they going to want to dance to? What are they going to want to go? Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah,
like, Joni Mitchell might fit in every show, but some things don't. Because it's like this 20-year-olds don't want to hear this, or 6-year-olds don't want to hear this.
Yeah, but I've learned a ton from it, just what hits in that environment. And I would just
well, and you hate the word monetize, but of course this is another way that that TikTok could help continue to sell those shows, right? That like just in growing your, God forbid, brand, or growing your people's awareness of you, that is something that eventually you can turn into.
I know,
sustainable.
Concerts,
especially if you don't want to do TV and film, because it's hard if you don't want.
There's so much freaking work.
Let's get to our game. And for our regular listeners, we have a rarity here. Normally, of course, I kind of host a game that our listeners have to now participate in. And I mean, our listeners, that our guest has to participate in, often me giving them trivia or various things. But our wonderful producer, Meghan, has created a game for Chris and I to play against each other.
Yes.
And this is going to go terribly for both of us. We're just setting this up. The expectations are low. Chris and I are both going to struggle, but I'm going to struggle more, almost certainly. So I pass this off to you, Meghan, to lead the game.
The game. And Charlie is a little unsure about how we are playing this game, so it's even better.
You better believe it.
Completely in the dark.
In the dark.
I love it.
I have a document on this that's attached to a document that I don't have access to. I keep clicking it and go, can I see what will happen?
It's my favorite when I don't give you access to documents. But I'm calling this game Good Kids at Empty Tables.
Oh, God.
Oh,
and we will be playing clips of Good Kid and Empty Chairs at Empty Tables. And you will be tasked with naming who is singing.
Oh, no.
I will play the clip. If you have an idea, you can raise your hands, because our listeners will play along at home to see if they can name these people. Yeah. Charlie, stop pulling up examples of who
I literally was Googling already. I was trying to cheat already. Meghan caught me. I just want to have enough
I've worked with Charlie enough to know when he's like reading an email when I'm talking to him.
I don't even have a cheat. It was just trying to come up with like young musical theater performers. I'm just like, who's 22 to 26? Because I'm worried. Like Jeremy Jordan is my most recent example. I'm like, I'm in trouble if they're young.
Well, Charlie's losing.
All right, I can't wait. I cannot wait. Here we go. This is going to be embarrassing.
Great. Are we ready for our first person?
Schools in 6 years, been kicked out of every place. Everything I ever do is wrong. Never find where I belong. Everybody on my kid.
Okay, Charlie has his hand raised. Do you have a guess?
I'm going to guess Colton Ryan. He's got to be in this game somewhere, right?
I did look for him, but he is not, unfortunately not one of the answers. So I'll save you some grief. Great.
Okay, great.
I'll give you the first clue. He's from your alma mater. Charlie,
oh, God,
CMU.
that's embarrassing. Okay, can you play it again? And now I'm going to use it with this. This is piano.
Oh, I know.
Yes, Chris.
Oh, wait, darn it. Now I know because he started to say it. You go.
Corey Cott.
Ding, 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 ding.
Dang it.
You got
Dang it.
He sang that before me. I remember looking that up to learn the song.
You had Corey Cott in the shower with you. My God.
In the shower. Before the shower, I was listening to Corey Cott.
I literally went to school with Corey. I should have known that. We played on the same intramural football team together. And
my gosh, of course. Football at CMU.
That was the only one I had a chance at getting, basically. That was my one I could have gotten.
Well, you may get this next one if you use your knowledge.
Was a world-class jerk. Dad was never there. The only family that really mattered. Well, she
Yes.
Dang it.
Chris.
Sam Light.
Oh my God.
Ding, ding,
This is
And friend of the pod.
These are two I had a chance at.
Mapping the
Megan,
College
you gave me two I had a chance at, and I didn't.
It's okay.
Either.
I'm like, not many people have sang Good Kid, have they?
Well, we're about to see how many.
And I think I may have them all listed here.
Suspense. I've got a pre-guess loaded. Don't worry. I've got it. Colton Ryan.
No, Charlie.
She vanished into the air, and now I finally find a haven someplace safe where I can stay.
I like that.
We have backup this time.
Oh, so this is out of college.
Maybe, maybe not.
Or a Robert Kiki event.
Wait, is this Rob Rokiki?
No, I was trying to.
Oh, that would have been great.
Do this.
That would have been great.
No, I didn't find Rob singing.
Rob has a beautiful voice, by the way.
He does.
Everyone heard him sing. He's a gorgeous voice. Oh, give us a clue. Can we get a clue?
Yes. He is part of Team Understudy.
We didn't have more than one.
Part of team, not necessarily of Percy, I should say. He's part of Team Understudy.
Oh.
Is he?
Yeah, it is.
That's what Izzy sounds like singing Good Kid? I've only heard him do Grover stuff. Oh my God, go off, Izzy.
You better go
Yeah, I'll
off.
send you the clip to get the full experience.
I love that.
Our next person.
They all sound so good. They all sound great.
Yes, Chris.
Is that Mike from BW in my production?
Yes, you got
Aww.
it. Yes,
I love
good for
him.
you. Chris just directed Lightning Thief last year at BW, or Playhouse Square.
Yeah.
And the fastest one he knew, which is good. That's a generous director. He immediately knew his own cat.
I heard that. I was like, I know that.
My God. Chris, you're destroying us at this game. You're doing great. You said you weren't going to do well. You did really well. You're knowing these well.
Well, there's just not too many to pick for. I've heard most of these in person.
I'm going to have more of a chance at Empty Chairs. I feel like I'm going to have more of a chance there.
Yes.
Do you have me in high school singing it, Megan? Is that on there? Wouldn't that be good?
Yes. Oh my God, I would
YouTube
die.
Empty chairs.
I'm embarrassed of how much of a
There's nothing to be embarrassed
YouTube hole I went into finding these videos.
It's definitely
So
not on
if
YouTube. This is before video existed.
there
don't
was
worry.
a video of you singing it, I would have found it, but I did not.
It's a different time.
As my voice was changing, it was rough.
Okay, who is this person? Yes, Charlie.
I'm going to guess Chris Peluso.
No.
Oh, come on.
Not Chris
I
Peluso.
was just trying to make a podcast connection of someone.
Oh, I know. I freaking know.
Ugh.
Is it Jonas?
It is. It's Nick Jonas.
Nick
Wait,
Jonas.
he wasn't on the podcast? Nick Jonas? He's on a Mapping the College Audition podcast.
He's
Yes?
coming next season, guys.
Oh, he's our 100th guest.
Tune in.
He's our secret 100th guest that we're
That we are plugging.
A special guest.
Exactly.
Okay, Josh Groban.
Not this one.
Okay, sounds like a Tony Award.
Okay, I'll get the skip ahead.
Wait, that is me. That's absolutely me. Sounds like me.
It's almost Andy, but not.
Okay, not guessing Andy.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yes, the hand is raised. The guess is Andy.
Andy?
It is. It is.
It is?
Oh, come on! That's another one.
I don't
could've
remember
gotten.
that low note. He's really pumping out that low note.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was
No?
me. It sounded like
Maybe on this Thursday evening, whenever this.
Yeah,
bootleg
maybe
is
that's what it
recorded,
sounded like in the
something
house.
that.
There was applause happening. There was whatever.
Yeah.
That's
Andy
Andy Miantis
Miantis.
is who we're guessing.
Yes.
Who I grew up with. I should have gotten this answer.
Yeah.
You grew up
Pittsburgh.
with Andy? I didn't
Yeah,
know
we
that.
did high school theater together back in the day.
Pittsburgh, right?
Ugh, I
Okay.
didn't. I should have made that connection that he did it. Damn it.
All right, Charlie.
All right.
Focus on
I
this
got
next
this one.
one.
I got this
You
one.
got this.
I'm not going 0 for 9. I can't go 0 for 9.
Yeah, it's not a good showing.
Ooh.
Yes, Charlie.
That's Josh Groban.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes! I almost guessed myself. myself.
Okay, this is our last one. No. Yes, Charlie?
Kelly O'Hara?
No. I love how scared you were to
Kelly.
out there.
Is that a reasonable guess?
My clue for this person is she was in Flower Drum Song with friend of the pod, Telly Leon.
Leia Salonga?
Yes, correct.
Oh my God. How fun. I've never heard that.
Well, congratulations, Chris. You did significantly better than Charlie, but you did have a little bit of head start, delving yourself into the material.
But you got all the ones I could have gotten. You got all the people I knew.
I was definitely catering it somewhat towards your knowledge, but alas, you got it a little bit slower. All right, congratulations.
Embarrassing. Me Googling young musical theater performers did not end up helping.
The fact that is just pulled up is funny.
Chris, this was fantastic. Thank you for playing this game with us. One thing I wanted to talk as we're wrapping up here, a little bit about TFCA. The wonderful fun for the college audition. So you mentioned through Pearl Studios magically you got involved with Ellen and with TFCA. How did that happen? And tell me a little bit about your work with them.
So I was in Pearl Studios because I coach there every Saturday and Sunday now, and I saw MTCA was on the freaking board, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, I never met any of y'all. I met Ellen real quick once. But I was kind of, I'm like, well, I'm in this game. I'm more adjacent to that. I want to just go say hi. I'd be like, we're doing similar things. And I see Amy Linden, who is from Cleveland and is one of the vocal techs. Is that what you call them? Vocal techs?
Vocal tech, yep.
At MTCA. And so I was like, hey, and I'm like, yeah, I'm coaching now. And I was like, how is Ellen doing? Because I knew of Ellen. Ellen was always just this mysterious, cool lady. And I met her real quick once. So I was just going to say hi. And she's like, well, she actually works for the fund for college auditions. And I'm like, what is that? And she explained that it's Ellen's new child. It's a new,
not so new anymore. It's been running for a couple of years
now,
but yeah.
Nonprofit, and the kids sweep every year, and they're all underrepresented from low income backgrounds. And I was like, shut up. That is number one, so needed and so exciting to me. And so I sprinted into Ellen's inbox and I was like, oh my God, tell me everything about the fund. And we got on a Zoom call, and I had I was like, I want to be boots on the ground helping anyway. And so we kind of talked a little bit, and I was given ideas and fundraising ideas and where I could see it going, and we just kind of started brainstorming about it together. And she's like, you need to be on the board, and you need to be part of this. So I'm now a board member, and me and Ellen are brainstorming where this nonprofit can go and just what it can accomplish. And I freaking adore its mission and just how freaking successful it is. It's just so it's just incredible. So fun to be this is so necessary, to the point that it's laughably they just sweep when they come in. It's just so exciting.
We're right now at the time of year where Ellen texts us every time a TFCA student gets into school, and it's here's this, and some amazing results, which we won't reveal any of the public people and results yet, since they haven't made their choices yet. But there's some, just talk about some of those schools that all said no to you. I mean, understandable. Are all they're just crushing. To your point of you saying sweeping, it's really exciting. And what do you think? What are the next, as you brainstorm, where does it scale? And we had Ellen on, I think, 2 years ago to chat a little bit about where it had been and where it was going. But what is the next sort of steps for the TFCA?
I think the next step is, how do we use the organization to really make changes that affect everyone, not just our few scholars that we have every year. And Ellen is just, I can't think of anyone who has more of a knowledge of simple, easy changes that we could make to this process to make it more equitable and accessible to everyone, not just people reach out to us. So I I see it really getting into kind of like activism and petitioning, coalitions. There's so much more structural change, getting more schools on board, being like, here's the issue. It costs $50 to apply to your school, plus a whatever pre-screen, but times that by 20, because that's what these kids are doing. It's not just your school. It's times everything you charge by 20. At least.
And these kids that Alan finds are so extraordinary, but the whole point is like, you shouldn't have to be so extraordinary. Like that, like everybody should be able to train and study this if this is what they want to do. It's like the old Chris Rock joke of like, I'm amazing, my place is amazing, like, and I'm like famous and so successful, and my life is great, and the guy, my neighbor, is a dentist. Like to be extraordinary, you shouldn't have to be so extraordinary to get to find that level of success. You should be able to just be a person who has talent and wants to train and wants to get better, and then continue to be able to do that at the college level.
Yeah.
Let's wrap with just, you've given so much advice away on TikTok already. My God, some of it today. But if I had a young artist that I'm working with, or maybe who's listening to this podcast, who says, I want to be Chris McCarrell when I grow up. I want to go to Baldwin Wallace and have his wonderful, successful career. What advice would you give to a young person? How do they achieve being a Chris McCarrell?
Oh my gosh. I would say the biggest thing to everyone. I mean, to everyone I know who comes into New York and really feels like they have instincts and really get stuff done, you have to swing through the frickin' ball with your training.
Oh, see, this is because I said football. You're using a baseball analogy now. I say, see, this is Chris is modulating. He's using more sports now.
I was thinking golf.
Oh, okay, fine.
But swinging through the ball, where we're using sometimes people get so tripped up in just the game and the strategy of college that they think that skill is the skill that is going to make you work later, and it's not. It's a whole different environment in New York. So I had my brother, that I was looking at, that was 7 years ahead. So I was preparing for that and using school to prepare for New York. But that requires knowing New York. So that requires maybe finding network, I don't know, but find boots on the ground in New York, explore their life, and then use your training to set you up for success in that environment. And it's not going to come from your teachers. It's not. This art form changes every single day. Everyone is guessing. Everyone is sprinting to keep up to an art form that is just flying on. So your instincts of how to prepare for that are going to outmatch your teachers. Eek, 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 if that's scary to say. But it is. And you collaborate with teachers. But you gotta be headstrong and have instincts and not a drop of fear. And you gotta truly love
Not a drop of fear. I'm not allowed any fear.
No, you're not. You're not.
I'm not gonna make it. I can't. No, that's not gonna work. I need a little bit of fear. But yes.
I'm speaking in certain terms, not a drop.
Certitude, not a drop of fear. You knock the fear off the ball.
I don't know. It's not a good. I don't know.
That's a great boy. It's a great piece of advice. I mean, I say it to our students all the time of like, school is not the end; it's the beginning. Like, it's like you're doing all this stuff, and your focus is for these 9 months and a year, however long you're really training in this. You have to be focused on it. It's too big not to put a significant percentage of your focus on it. But you need the bigger goal. You need the bigger dream, because the school is to train you to do the next thing, and then the dream expands and changes, and all those things. So that's great advice.
Yeah, and just
I say it's great advice because I say it too, so that means it's
great. That's a good advice.
In my opinion, it's great advice.
And a lot of people just, so one of the biggest, I could talk forever, but one of the biggest things is that so many kids quit within the first year of New York. They realize I didn't sign up for this. So it's like, know what you're signing up for, and then prepare to nail it. Ugh,
that's right.
Hard.
They all know what they're signing up for as the regular listeners of this podcast, of course, Chris. But that's really great advice. If people want to check you out, of course, we've kept plugging your TikTok, which is Chris MZ Carroll. Am I saying that right? Chris MZ Carroll, Carrell on TikTok. I'm sure they don't like search for you. I'm sure there's you just put your eyes in and somehow it just shows up on their feed because they've been listening. I'm sure there's a different way. They could do that on Instagram too, right?
And it's Chris Ms. Carroll. No one, everyone, that always goes over people's head. Christmas Carol, like Christmas Carol.
Oh, I did not catch that. I thought it was MZ, it's, instead of M Mister. So I thought it was
people think it's like because of Les Mis. People like think it's like Mister. I'm like, no, it's because my name sounds like Christmas Carol.
Chris, in your defense, I've only realized recently, and I've been working with Charlie for 5 years, that his email is Charmer because he's, a charmer, but it's also the start of his first and last name.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've explained that to
I had to say that out loud. I was like, I get it because you're charming.
We think too much about our screen names.
We sure do. But we also can find him on Instagram, on Cameo, the link to TFCA if you want to donate, which all of you should do. We'd love to throw a couple bucks their way if possible.
Please donate to the fund. Please. It's the biggest bang for your frickin' buck in this industry to actually support people who need it. Please donate to the fund, please.
Chris, thank you for your time today, man. It was such a pleasure.
It was so fun talking to you, Charlie.
Darn tootin', isn't Chris a hootin'? I really enjoyed chatting with him and getting to know him better. I think he's such a kind and genuine person, which I think comes through in his media, both podcast and social. I am going to do a takeaway, but before that, I just do want to do a re-shout out to the Fund for College Auditions. If you're someone who believes in more equity in this process and wants to help that along, a donation there is a great bang for your buck, as Chris did say. Ellen does really remarkable stuff with her students, and we are so honored to help so many of them to their phenomenal success. So that link will be in the show notes to donate, or you can head directly to thefundforcollegeauditions.org if you like typing stuff out. As far as a takeaway, I thought Chris brought up some really awesome stuff on authenticity within social media, but that is so far from my expertise that I will leave that one right where it is. I did think it was worth expanding a bit about audition preparation in terms of how much time you spend as a professional on these fast turnaround auditions you get earlier in your career, and now most often these fast turnaround self-tapes. I thought it was really interesting that Chris felt like he fell backward into success because he was so crazed that he stopped over-preparing. And I would say it's likely not just how busy he was, but also the repeated reps of again and again that made him feel more comfortable in the room to be himself. But either way, I think it's a really interesting balance for people to find. And you hear that phrase over-preparing a lot. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. To me, over-prepared is not normally about spending too much time, but about the way you spend your time. If you're working something with line readings, or Chris mentioned really trying to create a desired effect, this can make something feel polished or off-putting and sometimes. And if I'm putting on a show for you and showing you what I've done, like showing you my homework, this is what I would be, I am like this, well, then I'm not genuinely interacting with the material in the room when you're lucky enough to be in the room, right? But this same polish often happens from being underprepared too, as you try to learn the lines so quickly that you only memorize them with a certain emotional effect that you kind of imagine these lines are supposed to have, and then your lack of preparation is actually what creates the rigidity in your work. I think I've told this story before, but one of my early auditions in the city, which was a new play at the Public, and the casting director knew me, he'd cast me before, he really threw me a bone of an adjustment, which was to do the scene with a Pittsburgh dialect. I think he'd heard me do a Pittsburgh dialect before, and he was like throwing it to the director, like, oh, you're going to love this. And the character originally had a Southern dialect, so I thought this was going to be a super easy change. I already learned the thing with the dialect. Here we go, I'm going to switch Southern into Pittsburgh. I can do both these dialects. I just could not make the switch, which really confounded me. And unfortunately, I think underrepresented how flexible of an actor I actually am in the room. This is a particular skill of mine. I am really flexible. I'm good at taking direction. But I believe, my theory at least, is this all came from me not preparing well. It wasn't actually that I was under or over prepared, but I'd crafted my performance, especially in my work on that dialect, so tightly, partially because I cared about that audition so much. I thought this was a really great play and it was really a good opportunity, that I didn't find room for flexibility within my work. So those lines were grooved in tightly with that Southern dialect, and I couldn't pull them out of their grooves. So my big advice to young actors preparing is actually to focus more on how you prepare than just how much. You will often hear actors talking about fear of overworking, working something too much. Well, that's why they're going to put their audition away for a bit, right? They'll often say that. But I think 9 times out of 10, it's not actually too much tonnage of time, but rather too tightly gripped of a methodology of preparation. And certainly being underprepared is even riskier. Sometimes you'll have an amazing audition because you barely remember the words and it feels so loose and improvisatory and you feel great about all that, right? But the other edge of that sword can feel really bad. I mean, if they're watching you struggle with the lines, or you like take this path which leads to some really bad acting because you're trying to justify this weird choice that you tried to make because you didn't kind of read the scene or beat it out enough for yourself to know what was going on, that can be a really hard feeling when it's an audition you care about. You heard a couple episodes ago that story about Jimmy Nicholas and that amazing casting director, I think it was Meg Simon, I think is who it was, who gave him that tough love about how underprepared he was, right? She looked at him and was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Right? Turned the camera off and was like, give him a little talking to of Jimmy, this is inappropriate. You definitely don't want to fall into that trap of being underprepared. And I'm going to tag on a little bit of bonus sub-advice about preparation, especially when it comes to self-tapes and memorization. This is one of the most common mistakes I see young actors make, and older actors too. It's really hard, but a lot of people make the mistake. In the limited time of turnaround, the question of, do I memorize this? Do I memorize most of this but look down for the one monologue section in this one sentence that's got tricky language, right? Do I use one of those apps where I can read off the teleprompter, or is that going to make me look like I'm reading, right? I think everyone needs to find their balance and where they feel comfortable. I don't think there's one answer to this, but my big advice of what to try to avoid is please try to avoid the stage where you're mostly but not completely memorized, if at all humanly possible. Either go all the way there, have it memorized, or just have the paper to glance at if you need it, or do use those apps or whatever you do in terms of a teleprompter. But so often actors are like close enough that they feel like they almost can put down the paper, but they're still just a little shaky on some of the sections. So either you'll get an awkward paraphrase, which often for TV and film can be a little bit awkward if it's like, oh, I messed up the technical mumbo jumbo jargon, which is half the point of this Law and Order audition, or whatever it is. Or I think worst of all, and this is maybe a personal pet peeve of mine, you'll do that like Joey Tribbiani smell the fart acting, right? It's where you take these long pauses and really try to, act your way until you can figure out what the line is. I have seen so many talented actors ruin a pretty good self-tape with some intense justification for a pause where it doesn't make sense just because they needed the time to think of the line. If that's going to be the case, I would rather you have the paper, look down, and come back up again. And there's a whole we could go deep into maybe a different takeaway with long audition advice about, what kinds of things should you really memorize for TV versus for theater versus how many pages it is, right? You're going to hear all different kinds of advice. And there are certain auditions which really should be memorized, some auditions which is truly fine. And then it's hard to find exactly where that line is in between. You'll hear different guidelines from different people. That's a whole other takeaway. But the big thing I'll say is just try to not be in that in-between state, right? Be honest with yourself. If you're not off book, hold the paper. If you're off book, great, be really off book, right? But don't be caught in that no man's land where the whole take becomes about trying to remember the lines. That itself is not very interesting acting when I just watch an actor try to summon those lines from the ether. Well, that's it. Another incredible episode of Mapping the College Audition, produced expertly by the great Meghan Cordier. If you want to follow us for more social content and try to catch the steam of our mystery guest, 100th guest, then hit us up at Mapping the College Audition. Please give us a follow there. You can also give us a rating and review. You can rate us and review us in your podcast app or plan if you want to. You can also follow MTCA on all our socials. Follow me at Charmer7 if you want to see one of my 5 posts a year. I just posted some pictures from our night of parade, and you can check out MTCA at MT College Audition for help with your individual college prep. To my young artists mapping their journeys, what are you doing with your showers? We'll see you next week. Mapping the College Audition.